right, guys, so welcome to Summer Shape. I'm Dr. Ben. Most I know all you guys, so welcome. It's our Summer Shape workshop, and I wanted to start off with a quote from the best health and wellness book that was ever written. So I'm getting biblical on you guys just right out of the gate. So I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. Says Romans 7:15. And I think a lot of that is human nature. It's historical. It certainly applies to me. And I think that question, raise your hand if in the last week you knowingly did something that you knew would negatively impact your health. Raise your hand. And then keep your hand up if you, in the last week, knowingly did not do something that you knew would positively impact your health. That's me too, right? So the question is why? And I think that question of why we do things that we know that are going to harm us and are not healthy for us, and we don't do the things we know we need to do, that's the question. I think that's the question. The reason I became a doctor was because of that question. And I was really less interested or fascinated, especially at this phase of my career, less interested in the X's and O's and the right adjustment and the right supplement or the right drug or the right blood test. And I'm much more interested in why we do what we do in human behavior and decision making. So that's really what this revolves around. And it comes down, you've heard the story of the smoker. So you have the grandpa who smoked for 50 years, smoked every day, packs a day for 50 years, and then one day he's driving down the road smoking a cigarette with his 4-year-old grandson in the back seat, and the grandson says, Grandpa, I really wish you would stop smoking because I love you and I don't want you to die. And then he flicks out the cigarette, he throws the pack, he litters, but he never touches a cigarette ever again. And then you have the other grandpa who smoked for 50 years, and he's in the hospital recovering from a lung transplant and wheels himself down to the parking garage with oxygen attached to the wheelchair so that he can go bum a smoke. So that's the difference, is why do people do what they do and why do people not do what they know they need to do? And I think, you guys heard of the apple and the donut? If you ever heard me talk, I tend to do this a lot. Why do we choose the donut over the apple consistently? I did this talk with some 5th graders probably 3 years ago. And I said, raise your hand, what's healthier for you, an apple or a donut? And every single one of them knew that an apple is better for us than a donut. So why do we consistently choose the donut over the apple? And I think it's a few reasons. I think number one is we don't understand the devastation that's caused by that donut at the cellular level, what it really does to our physiology. And we don't understand the devastation of missing that apple. We just think that the donut packs on a few extra pounds, but we don't associate it with significantly higher risks of diabetes and obesity and cancer and allergies and asthma and autoimmune disorders and fibromyalgia. And we don't associate that apple with significantly lower rates of all those diseases. We think it's just packs on a few extra pounds, makes our kids squirrely, but the fact is it's poison. And until we start to realize or start to view things through that lens, it'll really be hard to change those decisions. And I see this all the time. We feed our dogs better than we feed our kids a lot of times. You hear it all the time. No, Timmy. Don't give that chips and soda to the dog. That'll make him sick. That's for you and your friends, right? To the point that we could laugh about that. But the fact is, it's killing children, right? And I don't want to stand up here as someone who never eats anything bad, never eats a donut. By the way, on the topic of donuts, if you ever been to 30A, you guys know Florida, South Brentwood, 30A, there's a place called the Donut Hole, and they make this powdered vanilla cream-filled donut, which is so packed full of vanilla, like if you handle it inappropriately, it'll explode with vanilla, and I get it every time we go down there, and it's okay to have vacation meals. The problem is a lot of people have been on vacation since like Reagan was in office, so it's time to kind of dial it in, tighten up, and we're going to talk through some of that in a moment. And the other reason we choose the donut over the apple is because we don't have a big enough why. And it's been said that if you have a big enough why, then you can endure just about any how. And if our why is big enough, then the how takes care of itself. For me, I remember my daughter was probably 4 at the time. She was 3 or 4, I can't remember exactly. But I had been working a lot, trying to get the practice off the ground, so I was working late nights, eating like garbage, not exercising, not taking care of myself. I was getting fat is what I was doing. And so I remember I came home one time, and the garage is in the basement, so I'd have to open the garage door. My daughter would run down the stairs, and you could hear like the pitter-patter of her feet as she'd kind of run down the carpeted stairs. And because Daddy's home, right? She wants to play. Well, I'd kind of bent down to like tie my shoe or take my shoe off, and she jumped on my back. And I remember I kind of did like a, like one of those numbers, like, get off me kind of thing. And she fell back, and she hit her head on the carpet. And I'll never, thank God it was carpeted, but I'll never forget the way that she looked at me. It was one of those like Daddy, how could you? Like, I love you, and I think you love me, and you want good for me. Like, how could you do that to me? And she didn't say that, but she said it, right? The choices I was making, or the things that I was doing that I hate to do, were harming her. And that was one of those pivotal moments for me. So like when I don't want to go to the gym and I don't want to work out, I remember that time shrugging her off and harming her because of my bad choices. And I would venture to say that a lot of you guys are harming some of the people around you. You're not shrugging them off physically, but you might be shrugging them off emotionally, because you're not taking care of your health, or not making the decisions you need to make, or financially, or with time, or spiritually, or there's ways that we harm the people around us. And those are the biggest whys. The people that have the real impactful big why are the ones that it's not about the bikini or looking better on vacation or better pictures on Instagram. They're doing it because of how it affects the other people around them. So if there's one takeaway from today, I would want you to identify what is your big why. Why do you want to get healthy? Why are you here? Why do you want to choose the apple over the donut? That would be my plea. So in the U.S., about 23% of people exercise on a regular basis. It's about a quarter of people. And if you look at Tennesseans, it's less than 20% of Tennesseans exercise on a regular basis. That means 4 out of 5 people do not get adequate amounts of exercise in the U.S. or in Tennessee. A third of America's youth is unfit for military service. And that's really the sad part, is when it affects our kids. About half of our kids have what's called a chronic disease, which is a disease they're going to carry with them throughout the rest of their life. And about a third of our kids are on what's called a chronic medication, which means they're taking a drug today that they're going to continue to take for the rest of their lives. And allergies, asthma, autoimmune disorders, fibromyalgia, like we're seeing, they had to rename diabetes. You guys remember what diabetes used to be called 20 years ago, the 2 types? They used to call it adult and juvenile onset. Well, they quit calling it that. Now they call it type 1 and type 2 because so many kids were developing adult onset diabetes. So we're actually renaming chronic disease because of the trajectory of our country. And then 73% of adults are overweight or obese, and that's in 2020. 2 years later, do you think that number has gotten better, worse, or stayed the same? Worse. Yeah, it's an upward trajectory. It looks like a hockey stick. It's just an upward trajectory. I actually this is from a PowerPoint that I did 10 years ago, and the number was 64%. So I had to go in and rework a lot of these numbers because in that period of time, the problem's getting worse and worse. So when does this end? When like 100% of our kids are on medications, or 95% of our population's overweight or obese? At some point, we have to put our feet in the sand and realize that it's up to us, that our health is our responsibility. And we're marketed to death, literally marketed to death, to believe that our choices do not matter. That, it's just your genes. If you have good genes, if your grandma lived to 100, then you got the easy road, right? And if grandma died at 40, then yeah, you're kind of screwed. There's nothing you can do. And nothing could be further from the truth. And I think that's the biggest lie that we teach people, or we allow people to believe, is that they're just a victim of their genes. And we're going to show you some research today that's going to knock you out of your chair when it shows the profound impact of our lifestyle choices. So, how do you define fitness and how do you define getting in shape? I like this top one. It says physical fitness is commonly defined as the capacity to carry out the day's activities, pursue recreational activities, and have the physical capacity to handle emergency situations. So like the house catches on fire and you get to be the person who helps get other people out of the house versus being the person that someone has to run back into the burning building to save. You know, you pull a table down on yourself, you can get it off of you. You're able to handle emergency situations that when the time comes, we're actually of benefit to other people around us. And the other one is the capability of the body of distributing inhaled oxygen to muscle tissue during increased physical effort. So it's the ability of the body to use energy is essentially how that's defined. You guys ever done a Ben Franklin list? You guys ever heard this, like the pro and con list? So anytime I make like a big decision in my life, I'll do a sheet of paper and what are the pros, what are the cons, right? So when it comes to exercise, what are the reasons to not exercise? Just shout those out.
Takes up too much time.
Too much time. That's a common one, which we're going to solve that one today, by the way. Time. What else? There's usually like 3. Pain. Yep, I'm in pain, so it hurts to work out. That's usually the other one. And the other one is it costs too much money. It's too expensive. Like I can't afford a gym membership. So it's usually time, money, and aches and pains. Like the body physically can't do it. So what are the reasons to exercise? On the other side of that list of reasons. Look better, feel better, sleep better, better hormonal balance, you have more energy, you have less depression, less anxiety, less risk of heart disease and cancer, and less risk of obesity. You cut your diabetes risk. The list is endless on the pro side of the exercise column, but on the con side, we can really legitimately, and I don't even think they're legitimate, but we can think of like 1 or 2 or 3 reasons to not exercise. So the biggest one that I see is that exercise hurts, and the reality is, or the truth is, that exercise actually reduces pain. It's a move it or lose it principle. Like a lot of people say, well, my knee really hurts, so if I exercise, it's going to make it worse. Well, the best way to treat arthritis is with movement. Now, I'm not saying load up a 300-pound CrossFit bar and do squats, but you have to move the joint. Do you guys remember the time where kids would break their wrist? That's 20, 30 years ago. Kids would fall and they'd break their wrist and they would put a cast all the way up to their shoulder. Anybody remember those days? They quit doing that because the elbow would develop arthritis. Because the elbow was unable to move and circulate and create motion, then the joint begins to decay. The reason people's spine starts to degenerate is because it's been out of alignment and stuck out of alignment for time. So any joint that doesn't move starts to break down. So the healthiest thing you can do for your joints is to keep them moving, within reason. Obviously there's exceptions. I don't have time to exercise. That's the other one. Getting into amazing shape can take just minutes a day, and I can't afford the equipment. We're going to show you how to do it with no equipment or with very, very minimal bands, things that just cost a few dollars at the most. Hey, will you crack that door open in the back, Jess? It's blocking this. So I read this book the other day. I highly recommend it. It's called The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. And he talks about how we have a crisis of comfort in this world, in this modernized world that we live in. We're way too comfortable. So essentially, he goes into the research, but he shows us how we are essentially still hunter-gatherers. Our genes haven't changed 0.004% in the last 10,000 years. So we are essentially the same as we were 10,000 years ago, virtually zero change whatsoever. But now we live in this comfortable world where we sleep in our nice comfy bed and we sleep on our nice comfy pillow and our warm sheets, and then in the morning we get up and put our slippers on and we get our warm cup of coffee, and then we eat our bagel and our frappuccino as we drive to work in our temperature controlled car, sit at our desk and never really get up and move, and then we drive back home and sit on our couch and we watch Netflix. Do you think our ancestors were doing that thousands of years ago? No. They were running away from tigers. They were literally climbing trees. They were exposed to extremes of temperature. They went long times with no food and borderline starvation. They dealt with literally multiple physical factors, but our bodies, we don't have to do that. We live these semi-comfortable lives. So the problem is when we incur a stressor, we fold like a wet blanket. Like somebody cut us off in traffic and we just lose our mind. Or our Wi-Fi cuts out. Or the barista put regular milk instead of soy milk, or that jerk, the light turns green and that idiot in front of us takes like 3 seconds to get on the accelerator. Like, those things literally destroy us because we live such generally comfortable lives. So the point of that is we have to seek discomfort. And with exercise and with metabolic conditioning, we're going to show you you're going to have to learn to seek a little bit of discomfort. But everything we want in life is on the periphery of our comfort zone. And that's in our relationships, that's in our spiritual walk, that's in our physical health. Everything we want out of life is on the edges or a little bit beyond our comfort zone. So we have to get used to pushing ourselves to that point. So the pillars of health, these are the 5 that we teach in this office. Our first pillar is our mindset, our emotions, and our spiritual health. I think in a lot of ways that happens first. We have to get our mind, our emotions, and our spiritual health on track. Our nervous system, because your nervous system is the master control system of the body. Anything that affects you, you are your nervous system. We are essentially animated nervous system. Your brain, spinal cord, the better that system works, and the better that system works with less interference, the better your body works. Nutrition, and I put nutrition in appropriate supplements, because a lot of you guys are taking like stuff that you probably have the most expensive urine in town, or you're taking redundant things, or you're taking things that are toxic, which, you guys remember Centrum? A lot of people still take hopefully not here, but a lot of people do take Centrum. They actually found in the septic system that you can still read the label, the Centrum name on the pill, which is actually a good thing because you don't really want to absorb what's in that stuff. They use aluminum and metal manufacturers. They use their waste products to manufacture their vitamins. So really it's a good thing that we don't absorb those things. But a lot of those things are toxic and or useless. Oxygen and lean muscle, which is the focus of today, and then detoxing, or minimizing our exposure to toxins. So exercise in your mind. So researchers found, and I could have pulled 50 studies that validate this exact same thing, but we had to only use a few, that walking for 30 minutes a day improved a patient's symptoms faster than an antidepressant drug, and it also worked for longer than the antidepressant drug did. So not only does it work faster, but it actually is more effective over the long term than traditional antidepressants. And do you think they tell people that when they go in for their depression symptoms, when they they consult their doctor? No. And I'm not saying you can cure every case of depression just by getting people on a treadmill, but that research is profound. I mean, there's people there's such an abundance of that literature. And then a 2012 study found that 4 months of high-intensity interval training significantly improved the cognitive functions such as the ability to think, recall, and make quick decisions. So Joe Biden needs high-intensity exercise. If I offend anybody, I'm sorry. So to get the results that you want, there's some common themes between people that get results. That 98% of them modified their food intake, and the other 90% exercise daily. And we're not going to say you have to exercise every single day, just the days that you want to be healthy. So you can skip every other day, right? So 4 days a week is what we teach. And it only happens with lifestyle change. Like, there's not a pill. We always say there's not a pill, there's a path. There is not a pill that solves this problem, but there is a path. If there was a pill, I would be selling it. You better believe it. If there was a pill that could get people healthy, I'd sell you 2 just in case the first one didn't work. But there's not a pill, and most of you know that. You're not here because most people that come to my office, they've already tried the pills, and they know the pills don't work. Or if you're here looking for a pill, you're probably going to be greatly disappointed because, this is not, that's not, there's only a path. There is no pill. This clicker is awful. Accountability showed if they put people through an 8-week, before they started their exercise program, if they just put them through an 8-week educational program where they took the time to kind of break down exactly what they're going to be experiencing and how their body worked, they kind of walked them through like a weight management course beforehand and then started the 20-week weight loss program, more people lost weight than the people that were just thrust into the program. So a lot of it's about the accountability and the information that we gather and the knowledge base behind what we're doing, which is why we're going through this. We want you to have the knowledge base so that you can make those decisions, not just chuck you into because most of you didn't come here to learn how to do a burpee, right? There's YouTube, you can get all the exercise basically for free. You can get any kind of exercise program you want if you just get on your computer. So we have access to all these exercises and programs, but we don't do them. So that's really the key, is to have the support and the accountability, and then the know-how. And then meal planning, goal setting, accountability. And if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Right, we all know that. That's third grade stuff. So classic cardio, and I'm not here to bash classic cardio. If you like cardio, there are some amazing benefits, absolutely better than doing nothing, but we can do better. So with classic cardio, the pros that occur is you lower your resting heart rate. Lowers blood pressure. Jess, you may just have to turn that toward me a little bit. Lowers blood pressure. Brain, it increases circulation, aids in detoxification, stimulates the lymphatic system. So it does have tremendous amounts of benefits. Cardiovascularly, it helps the brain. So any exercise is better than none. The problem is, most people that do cardio, they put the treadmill on like 4.5 miles an hour, and they walk at a moderate to medium pace, where they can kind of like, turn the pages of the magazine. Hey, kind of do that at the gym, right? You're not really getting out of breath. You're just sort of moving, right? So there's benefits to that. The cons with classic cardio is it raises cortisol. So it raises a stress hormone, because our bodies are not designed to walk at a steady pace for 45 minutes. We're hunter-gatherers. So we're supposed to chase the bunny rabbit, catch it, eat it, and kind of be done, right? We don't chase the gazelle for 6 hours until it finally gives up. We're more sprinters than we are distance runners. Unless you're born in Africa, then that's a little bit different. But for the most part, we're designed to sprint, run, catch, and go. And this decreases testosterone, increases fat storage, inhibits exercise recovery, decreases testosterone, and reduces human growth hormone. So it's kind of the opposite of what we want to do hormonally with traditional exercise.
Why would it increase your fat storage?
Because that cortisol surge is an anabolic hormone. It basically causes your body to hang on to fat. So you tend to burn fat during the exercise, because we always say, you get on the exercise equipment and you get up into the fat burning zone, which is what they call that. So it does burn some fat during the activity, but then after the machine stops, the benefit stops with it. Now what we show you with this surge training or burst training is you get that initial rush of a little bit of fat burning, a little bit of sugar burning, but then the afterburn, because you pushed your body to such a limit, I'm getting kind of ahead of myself, it actually causes you to burn fat for the next 24 hours. So it's not catabolic. Anything that causes you to increase cortisol will cause you to increase fat storage. And that's true of lack of sleep, too much caffeine, too much alcohol. Anything that increases cortisol will cause you to store more fat. And then metabolic conditioning. So that's what we teach, that's what we prefer. And the key line is that specific hormonal and energy production response. So that's really the key with metabolic conditioning. It helps you to increase specific hormonal pathways, particularly testosterone and growth hormone, and it helps you to increase the way your body uses energy. So that's surge training. And it's high intensity, short duration, and you're exercising at roughly 80 to 90% of your maximal heart rate. And the beautiful thing, it can be done in as little as 4 to 12 minutes per day. So some of the benefits, if you guys need to, I can email you this PDF of this if you ever need like the slides. So with metabolic conditioning, eventually increase human growth hormone and testosterone while thereby decreasing cortisol, significantly increases lean muscle tissue development, and you get the afterburn, which helps you not only during but also after the exercise is done, and then it enhances both anaerobic and aerobic systems. Anaerobic means without oxygen. Now, if you're doing burst and you're, do you think you're increasing your aerobic capacity at the same time? Absolutely. Yeah, if you're hunched over sucking air, your body, you're increasing aerobic and anaerobic at the same time. And then improves the cardiovascular response, the body's ability to deliver oxygen. And then lastly, It improves cellular function. It actually helps your body to detoxify and eliminate waste. And it also increases a thing called autophagy, which is very important, especially in the cancer world. It's your body's ability to find rogue, old, decrepit cells and chew them up. It's like Pac-Man running around the system, and it chews up and destroys the old cells before they become cancer cells. So it helps your body to kind of recycle the cellular process. So fat burning with metabolic conditioning, in a 97 study, there was a significant loss. This is important. Significant loss in the group that exercised at an intensity of 80 to 90%. And what they found was the people that exercised at only 60 to 70% of their maximal heart rate, there was no significant change in body fat. So it's just that little 20% different increase in effort that made all the difference. So it's literally someone who's kind of jogging at a good pace versus someone who's sprinting as hard as they can. And the real kicker is there was no significant difference in workload between the two groups. So they basically did the same amount of work, it's just one did it just a little bit more intensely. So that's that little bit of effort, that little bit of extra that makes all the difference. In another small group, over 12 weeks, the subjects lost an average of 0.31 pounds, which is like a stick of butter around the waist, around the belly, and then about 3 pounds of pure fat for their butt, hips, and thighs. That's lots of sticks of butter, right? That's just in 12 weeks. So we get a lot of people that say, you know, I work out all the time, or I eat pretty good and I exercise, but you know, I can lose 5 pounds and then I just kind of get stuck. Well, A, it's because your nutrition is probably not on par, but if that gets on track and you still can't lose weight, then you're not signaling the hormones to turn you into a fat burner. You're not making the body turn you into a person that burns fat. That's the trick. So rethinking how we exercise, we know that exercise reverses most of the factors associated with metabolic syndrome. By the way, metabolic syndrome is rampant in this culture. Metabolic syndrome is insulin insensitivity, so your insulin receptors are completely out of whack. You have high triglycerides, low HDL, visceral body fat, hypertension or high blood pressure. Those 5 key components make up a thing called metabolic syndrome. And then metabolic syndrome leads to heart disease and cancer and diabetes and Alzheimer's. Do you know they're now calling Alzheimer's and dementia type 3 diabetes? That's the new mnemonic for dementia and Alzheimer's, is type 3 diabetes. Because we know the way your body uses energy determines whether or not your brain functions for the long haul. And a lot of it has to do with the same processes that cause people to be diabetic. And you don't get diabetes by accident. You get it by years and years of dedicated hard work. Like, it takes a lot of work and effort to become type 2 diabetic. It doesn't happen by accident. It's not genetic. It's 100% lifestyle related. Same thing with dementia. And I have a grandfather and a grandmother who both suffered with that. So I get the emotional connection to that. But that is caused by lifestyle over time. I mean, we're literally committing suicide by lifestyle. They say we're digging our graves with our forks and we're burying our corpse with fast food wrappers. Like, it's literally like that's the way that we're living our lives. So after 16 weeks of high intensity exercise program, almost half the patients enrolled no longer had metabolic syndrome. So they basically reversed chronic disease and without making any change to their diets. Now, would I recommend you make changes to your diets at the same time? Absolutely, because the more boxes you can check, the better. But these people did it without, and then less impressive gains were seen with people that did like the classic cardio. I do the treadmill for 45 minutes every day, or I walk the dog every day. So less impressive gains. So how to surge? You can really do anything. Anything that gets your heart rate up into that 80 to 90%. Do you guys know how to calculate your maximum heart rate? It's like 220 minus your age. So 220 minus your age is your max. That's your 100% maximal heart rate. So you take 90% of that number, 80 to 90%. That's kind of the range. But really, if you don't want to check your pulse or wear a monitor or do it, technically, the trick to it is that's 90% of your maximal heart rate. If you get out of breath and you're grabbing your knees and you're sucking wind, then you're bursting. That's the trick. Well, if you did like 100 burpees in 7 minutes, you would be at your 80 to 90% guaranteed. Anybody do burpees? I hate burpees. Probably one of the best exercises you can do, but they're tough. Cycling, sprinting, climbing stairs, doing elliptical, doing whole body movements like squat thrusts and lunges, anything that you can do. I really like doing, we got a Peloton. I actually got it for my wife knowing that she would rarely use it, so I actually got that for me for her Christmas present, which was brilliant. But you can crank the resistance up really high, stand up off the seat and go as hard as you can go for 20 seconds, and then I crank that resistance knob down to where the pedals are basically moving me, and then 10 seconds off, and then 20 seconds up and 10 seconds down. So we'll kind of show you in a kind of the specifics of how to do the timing in just a second. So dieting doesn't work. Don't diet. Please don't diet. Because 3/4 of the word diet are die. So nobody is anyone currently on a diet now that they started a year ago? And the answer is no. And if the answer is yes, then you actually made lifestyle changes like you, and you're just continued those lifestyle changes till now. So it's not about dieting. And by the way, every diet works. If your goal is short-term weight loss, every diet works. You can do the low-fat, high-fat, low-carb, the South Beach, whatever. But what they really do is they allow us to have a lighter casket. So like less people are needed to help carry your casket. So all that does. So dieting doesn't increase lifespan. It doesn't change the metabolism. For the short term, it just changes body composition, which we know doesn't last. 2/3 of dieters regain more weight than they started before they started their diet, and studies show that dieting actually may promote weight gain. So again, it's lifestyle change. It's not a fad diet. So if you want to lose 10 pounds fast, raise your hand if you'd like to learn how to lose 10 pounds fast, right? That's everybody. So eliminate sugars. So sugars are the big one, and sugars, I mean, I don't have to explain to you guys what sugar is. But sugar is found, it's tricky, it's sneaky. They will sneak sugar in ketchup, they'll sneak it in barbecue sauce, they sneak it in tomato soup, they sneak it in just about every kid's food product you can imagine. So you gotta read the labels, and then cutting out grains. This is tricky for a lot of people because grains, again, are found in everything. And that's bread, pasta, cereal, crackers, chips, pretzels, cookies, bagels, muffins, pastries, and corn. Those are all considered grains, sadly. Now, I don't cut out all of those completely. Now, I try to minimize them when possible, but for the most part, like some of those are going to sneak in there sometimes. So, but the closer you can adhere to that, the better your metabolism, the more weight you'll lose, the better you'll feel. Removing the bad fats and adding good fats, which we'll talk about in just a second. And then eating fruit sparingly. It's like, what? Fruit? I thought fruit's good for me, right? Fruit converts to sugar. It contains fructose. Now, there are better fruits than others, so you want to stick with like berries, anything that ends in berries, strawberries, raspberries, blueberries. My daughter used to call them doodleberries, which I guess are better than dingleberries, right? So anything that ends in berry is good for you. Lemons, limes, Granny Smith apples, and avocados. Those are like your list of healthy fruits. So anything that ends in berry, lemons, limes, avocados, and Granny Smith apples. Those are your approved fruits. For the most part, generally, you can eat them without any second thought. But like your bananas and mangoes and melons, those type of fruits, those are the ones that you want to keep an eye on. Generally, the ones that you have to peel, except for avocados, the melon, the lemon, or the melons and the bananas are the big ones.
Granny Smith apple the best apple?
Good question. It's less sugar. So Granny Smith apples have less sugar than like your Red Delicious or your Pink Ladies. I love Pink Lady apples, right? But if at the end of the day, the worst thing you ate that day was a Pink Lady apple, that's a pretty good day, right?
Kiwis or oranges?
Kiwis are high in sugar, oranges, citrus, melon, yeah. Those are higher in sugar. But again, oranges or Skittles, or you did better with oranges, right? So a lot of this is just making better than choices. Yeah, orange Skittles. Yeah, you win both ways. That's right. And then avoiding toxins. And then we get a lot of people too that, I've eliminated the sugars, I cut out the grains, my fats are good, I'm not eating a lot of fruit, and I still can't lose weight. Well, 100% of the time it comes down to you're toxic. And there's various ways that we go through that. We're rolling out a gut detox program, which is amazing, but there's different ways, and it can get kind of complicated to find, what type of toxins your body's harboring. But for most people, that's sort of their limiting factor. So good fat versus bad fat. So energy, cell wall integrity, burns bad fat. Did you know that bad fats have a half-life of 52 days? So if you eat a bad fat, it takes 104 days for that bad fat to be eliminated from your body because it gets incorporated into the cell wall. So we're paying for French fries that we ate back in January, right? Because when you eat a bad fat, it literally gets taken into your body and becomes part of the cell wall. So it takes about that amount of time for your body to turn those cells over and eliminate those toxins. So that's why it's the fats are really the biggest. And with the bad fats, you got to watch the linoleic acids. So your sunflower oils and your corn oils and your canola oil. You guys know where canola oil comes from? Anyone ever seen a canola plant? It doesn't exist. There's no such thing. It looks like on the bottle, it looks like an ear of corn, but there's no such thing as a canola plant. It stands for Canadian Oil Low Acid. So it's an acronym for genetically modified rapeseed oil, which sounds bad enough. Highly inflammatory. It's already omega-6. It's literally rancid by the time it reaches the grocery store shelf. Canola is one of the worst things you can put in your body. But guess who recommends canola oil? The American Heart Association, the American Diabetic Association. They pay to put their little stamp of approval, their endorsement, they pay to put that on those products. It's all a pay-to-play kind of system. But it's really criminal when you look at that. But those are the bad fats, and then you have your olive oil and flaxseed oil at low temperatures. So if you're going to do a salad, you're going to do something just very, very lightly heated, almost none at all, steamed broccoli, you can add those in low temperatures, olive oil and flaxseed oil, because they have a very low flash temp. They get really, really, really hot really quick. And the best way to turn a good fat into a bad fat is to get it too hot. Because when it smokes, it's rancid. Just always remember, if it smokes, it's rancid. And then at your high temperatures, you have coconut oil, grapeseed, and avocado oil. You almost can't burn those. They literally have 400-degree flash temps. It's insane. Avocados, flax, coconut, nuts and seeds, raw, preferably raw nuts and seeds, because when you take a cashew and you heat it and roast it and put it in all those bad oils, you just turned a good fat into a bad fat, right? So raw is always better. So we go to Fresh Market where they have the little pull down deals where you get those. That's the best way to get the nuts and seeds. And I keep a bag in my car. I haven't had any in a while, but I keep them here too, so we can always have those on hand. Grass-fed beef. Can I get an amen for butter and cheese and grass-fed beef? Amen. Free-range eggs and chicken and eggs, and then wild-caught salmon or fish. Those are all good sources of healthy fats. And then it wouldn't be summer if we didn't talk about sunscreen, so we got to talk about this for a moment. So did you know that the cultures that wear the most sunscreen, there was a study done out of Queensland, Australia, and this was back 7 years ago, where their community did an all-out, over-the-top push to get their citizens to wear as much sunscreen as they can get. They literally just an all-out ad campaign to get people to wear sunscreen. And they actually have the highest rates of the deadliest cancers. So the cultures that wear the most sunscreen have the highest rates of fatal cancer. Does that sound completely crazy to you? I would hope it does, because we're told the exact opposite message. So traditional sunscreen, there's three main problems. They generate free radicals, they have estrogenic activity, so they mimic estrogen in the body, which turns little boys into little girls and little girls into cancer patients. So you want to avoid things that have estrogenic activity, and they're highly toxic and they accumulate in the body fat. So you want to avoid like the oxybenzones and the azobenzones, anything that ends in benzone or has retinol. So when the sun hits the sunscreen, it actually oxidizes it. So it creates a chemical reaction that actually changes the substance, and it becomes extremely toxic. But there are healthy alternatives. So you have your chemical-free, so like your Aubrey's Organics. There's tons of brands at Whole Foods and not Fresh Market, but Trader Joe's, or not Trader Joe's, Sprouts. I think they carry something there too. We use Sunbum. That's a decent brand. So there are brands. It kills me when I see like the parents with the kids, and they're literally like spraying them in the mouth. Like, just close your eyes, and they're like dousing them in the face with all these horrible toxic chemicals, which are known to actually cause cancers. Do you think God would give us skin and make us hunter-gatherers who are supposed to live and work and play outdoors, and make the sun so toxic to our bodies that if we get outside, we're going to get skin cancer? I mean, just think about that logically. And the cultures that get the most sun have the lowest rates of skin cancers. The people in the Caribbean don't get skin cancer. People that live around the equator don't get skin cancer. Now, I'm not advocating getting burnt. Getting burnt is terrible for your body. The studies are clear. If you get burnt, like literally sunburnt periodically over and over again, then that will increase your rate of skin cancer. But by and large, that's not the reason. And if the sun caused skin cancer, we'd all get it on the tip of our nose, and we get it on the back of our hand, and we get it on our cheeks. My grandfather had melanoma on the back of his knee. Like, where's he getting sun there? There's anal melanoma. About 160 Americans die every year from anal melanoma. So either it's not from the sun, or, yeah, I don't even want to, the visual on how they're getting that.
The sun does shine there.
Yeah, right? And then this is a chart that shows your vitamin D. The other bad thing about sunscreen is an SPF of 15 blocks about 95% of your vitamin D production. So if you just put at 15, that's the one you're supposed to get, right? At least 15. 15 will block 95% of your skin's vitamin D production. So we have to get sun to be healthy. This is a chart that shows your vitamin D level across the top. So if you go to the doctor and you get a blood test, or you do our little kit that we have here, and you prick your finger and you send it off, they're going to send you a little chart that shows you what your vitamin D level is. So it's from 6 all the way up to 68. And then on the left-hand column, you have all the diseases, from cancers to breast cancer, ovarian, colon cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, type 1 diabetes, falls, multiple sclerosis, heart attacks, kidney cancer, endometrial. And then down at the bottom, you have rickets. Do you guys know what the standard is for vitamin D level? Like what you're supposed to be? It's between 30 and 100, which is a ridiculously large range to begin with, because someone who's 31 is not the same as 98, right? There's different varying. But 30 is the cutoff for rickets. That red line is the cutoff. So as long in America, if you go to your medical doctor, as long as you're above 30, you're fine. So 30 guarantees that you're not going to get rickets. How many people do you know walking around with rickets? Like soft bowed legs, like nobody, right? Well, rickets has not been an issue for dozens of years, probably 50 years. But then you notice, like, if you can get your vitamin D level to 38, you can reduce or prevent 77% of all cancers combined with a vitamin D level of 38, if you're taking calcium with the vitamin D. Breast cancer, we could cut 83% of breast cancer cases by getting every woman's vitamin D level to 52. What are you?
You're good.
You good? And it's such an easy thing to do. Like, we could literally do that. And to get those numbers, they do what's called a meta-analysis, where they pool data from multiple studies and they combine all the data for accuracy, and then they combine that into this chart. So I didn't have the room to put all the references at the bottom. Colon cancer, 60% reduction, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, type 1 diabetes we can cut by 66% just by getting people out in the sun or raising their vitamin D level. I mean, it's really generally that simple. And we know that the people that suffered the most from COVID were people that had chronically low vitamin D levels. But guess who suppressed that information? They didn't want you talking about, yeah, they didn't want you talking about having elevated vitamin D level protecting you from COVID. But we know that in the South Korean study, they found that over 90% of the people that either died or were hospitalized had vitamin D levels well below 30. So they know this data, they know it's out there, it just was suppressed. Got to keep moving. So some benefits of moving well. We'll run through these real quick. So you can prevent, just from moving well, prevent 91% of cases of obesity and type 2 diabetes. That's $519 million per day in the United States. Per day we spend on obesity and type 2 diabetes. Prevent 50% of cases of heart disease. Heart disease kills 950,000. That's exceeded 1 million deaths per year since this number's come out. So about 1 million people will die from heart disease this year in this country. Is that because they forgot to take their pills? No. They'll take their pills and they're going to die anyway, because nothing about the system prevents people from needing the system. There's nothing about drugs and surgery that prevents you from needing drugs and surgery. Do you get that? There's no prevention in that system. It's just managing symptoms. Reduce stroke risk by 25 to 30%, prevent 50% of all stroke deaths. Congestive heart disease